The amount of experience that we go through in doing what we do is many lifetimes. The problem is holding on to a fixed point for long enough to understand it.
All veils and mystery.
You know, when there's one person in a room that has a special light, that was him.
He was the complete package.
And everyone wanted a piece of him.
Michael always had that aura about him.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I'm your host, Mavic Pekovic, and this is episode number 218. Releasing in Australian cinemas on July 4 is Mystify, Michael Hutchence, an intimate and eye-opening documentary on the life, loves and music of the late, great INXS frontman Michael Hutchence, whose 37 years on this earth is beautifully presented in a documentary that successfully changes the narrative of a legacy marred by tabloid gossip. Joining me now to talk about Mystify, Michael Hutchence, is the film's director and Michael's friend and collaborator, Richard Lowenstein. Richard, I thank you very much for joining me today.
No problems, thank you.
Reading up just some research on this documentary, initially the plan was, years ago, that you wanted to make a feature film about Michael's life. How did the circumstances change that you switched to a documentary feature?
We went into 3 rounds of funding to do a drama because, I mean, that's kind of my main interest and my main area of where I'm coming from was dramatic feature films. And I really did think, I was going to get the story out to a much broader audience than I would with a documentary. And I guess also, when was that? It was like mid-2000s I started that project. And the sort of cinema distribution and the for theatrical documentaries hadn't really taken off like it has in the last decade or so. Or decade in particular. But so we were. I think I spent about 5 years developing the story, researching, immersing myself in it, and around the time that the Channel 7 miniseries got announced, and also started getting casted and everything. I basically thought, well, I saw who they cast and I saw the actors, and I thought, oh well, maybe even if I got someone famous or someone with a similar charisma or something, I just felt that I wasn't really doing Michael's story justice by not having him play himself, And we sort of looked at the whole dilemma, and knowing the actual footage, we not only had ourselves in sort of beautiful 35mm and 16mm and everything, as well as all the behind-the-scenes home video stuff, but also knowing that what I hopefully would be able to access from all his other close friends and things, I basically decided that we should sort of structure the story much like a drama, but using the real footage, and so that Michael could actually play himself. And so that's when the sort of search began for not only archival interviews, audio and imagery, but also interviews with all his close and intimate friends, some of whom never spoken before publicly. So yeah, it's sort of, and I'm so relieved I did, because it's like, even though you can like films like The Doors and Bohemian Rhapsody, it's not really them, is it? It's an actor who may approach that charisma, but it's not really a proper record of the person's journey on this planet. It's always going to be a fictionalization, whereas this is, it's very, very close. Well, it is the person who existed.
When it comes to the format, the structure of your documentary, did you know from the get-go what film you wanted to make, or perhaps more specifically, what film you did not want to make?
Well, yeah, I knew I didn't want to make a formularized documentary with talking heads and, starting at childhood, and there he goes, growing up, and there he goes playing in the garage and everything. So we sort of knew what we didn't want to do. And, you know, I've seen enough sort of, not just documentaries in general, but I've seen enough sort of rock docs in my time to know that they tend to fall back into a certain genre, a certain formula.
Yep.
I thought that was a real kind of insult to the experience I'd experienced with Michael, and I felt I owed him something a bit better, a bit more engrossing, a bit more all-encompassing, an immersive experience, because sort of that's what he gave me in real life. You know, was this immersive experience with surround sound and, you know, big screen sort of stuff. It's like and I just sort of knew. I mean, I'm a sort of great fan of D.A. Pennebaker with his observational style, and, you know, we didn't have the luxury of being able to follow Michael around making a documentary, but I had followed him around and filmed unconsciously. So I actually, you know, I knew I wanted to make that kind of observational documentary, but with archive. And those observational documentaries basically do follow stylistic choice of the subject of your documentary speaks and you observe, but usually other people or the friends or relatives are either just audio or they're in it themselves at that point in time. So, you know, it was a very sort of easy decision from my point of view to just use Michael imagery and use audio to its greatest benefit, and not necessarily see our interviewees sitting there in a, you know, cliche recording studio or a hotel room or whatever it's going to be, or against a black psych, you know. And speak, you know, normally those things you end up speaking rigidly and uncomfortably because you're aware of the lights and the camera and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I travelled the world for a year or so, just sort of taking people into little dark recording studios and having just a mic between us and no one else, no other film crew. And then suddenly the memories would come and people would travel back in time, and that's the nature of the film, is like travelling back in time in a very intimate level.
And it's also just a great balance between the footage, the interviews, the music. I'm just really curious though, what was more difficult to attain, the footage, the interviews, or the music?
The music was extremely difficult to obtain because of the, you know, the presence of managers and record companies and sensitive band members who weren't sure how they were going to be portrayed. And but, you know, honestly, the biggest problem was record company and management trying to use this as an excuse to sell back catalogue. And I was very clear that that's not what the kind of film I was trying to make. I absolutely did not want a puff piece that, you know, ignored Michael's solo work or even underscoring or even the music he would have been listening to in favour of, you know, cramming it full of NXS songs. So, you know, there was a few, there was a while there where I tried to come to an agreement with management and record company, but it all fell apart in an inglorious heap when they wanted right of final cut. And so all the music got pulled, all the INXS music got pulled out. And so we went forward and made it without INXS music. And we had the Max Q music, of course. We had some of his solo work, anything that he didn't write, you know, we were allowed to use. He or Andrew Farris or the band didn't write, we were allowed to use. And then finally, after a year of editing, we had the opportunity to show it to Michael's daughter, Tiger Lily Hutchence Geldof, and she, you know, loved it, gave it her approval, contacted all the band members via email, who, I mean, I must say she hadn't made any contact before, and contacted the record company, the management, and 24 hours later we had the music that we wanted.
Wow. Once you have an approval like that? In going back to sourcing your interviews and having people talk about Michael and their relationship with Michael, and you have this footage that's very intimate, very raw. Is there a heavy feeling of responsibility on you to make sure that you're going to present this stuff in the, I wasn't going to say the correct light, but in a light that would not only appease you as a filmmaker, as an artist, but also all these people, family and friends who knew him through the years?
Well, I mean, you can feel that presence, you can feel that sort of the people, family and friends saying, I should be in it, and some of them saying, I don't want to be in it, but I'm going to do an interview anyway, and but really what guides you, I don't really feel the responsibility. I feel I'm a cog in a machine and how to keep everyone happy, but that's not what guides me. What guides me is just authenticity, and authenticity of character, authenticity of story, getting all the facts correct, getting the characteristics correct, having time to appreciate certain characteristics, Michael's humour, Michael's depth, Michael's depression that was there even before all the traumatic incidences in his life. And, that wasn't just a sort of a sensational sort of cartoon cutout of a portrait, where you recognise the image maybe, but you don't recognise much else, So I did know, that everybody wanted me to make a certain kind of film, or the friends that would do this, and but that's it wasn't a pressure, because that's the film I wanted to make as well. That you could say set the record straight, but really, what was the most interesting was capturing the persons that I knew and that I would recognise. So when I saw the film, that I would recognise the character that I'd spent all that time with, and I would recognise his journey as an authentic journey and not some sort of journey that had been slanted by everyone's motivations or self-motivations, which tend to rise up after someone passes away. Everyone is suddenly jostling themselves into prime position or saying, I was his best friend, no, I was his best friend, no, And those egos were sometimes very hard to deal with, and beating them back sometimes. And, and some people at the end may not be too happy. Some of his close confidants, in the last few years of his life or throughout, may not be too happy that their input or their connection wasn't there as much as they thought it should be. And, So, but unfortunately, you only have 100 minutes, and authenticity of story and character is of prime importance to me. So that's really what not only me, but my kind of, what I like to call my co-directors at Ghost, because we all sit there. There's no real hierarchy. We all sit there, and we all knew Michael, and we all, toss up every aspect and create scenarios and create little sequences and put them together and say, is this worthy of, it is truly a group and a collective effort at Ghost. There's Andrew de Groot, our cinematographer and producer. There's Lynn Marie Milburn, editor and producer, and Sue Murray, who's very, very, almost motherly guiding hand, but incredibly experienced in the film world. So we all have a very strong input in shaping the final thing, and we all knew Michael. So I think that's why you end up getting a very intimate portrait at the end, even unconsciously intimate.
How many hours of footage did you receive through the years?
It's sort of footage, and if you add audio interviews as well, because there was a hell of a lot of audio, but that'd be over 300 hours.
Wow.
But sometimes it's not as daunting as it actually sounds, because you head first of all towards the Michael interviews, because a lot of the interviews are with other band members, managers, and things, and so a lot of them, both that we did, but also that we found in the archive world, you can just put to one side as something that you will look at if you can't tell the story in Michael's voice. So sometimes you'd sort of find rolls of film in your attic and things like that, and so it'd be literally just 10 minutes of gold, and so that 10 minutes of gold would stand out from the 20 hours of sort of repeated takes on a music video, because things like the Michael and Kylie on the boat in Hong Kong Harbour, that was found in the middle of a whole lot of rushes of other music videos, and we didn't even know we had it. And the majority of that 10 minutes is in the film. So it's not as daunting as it sounds. But yeah, there was about 300 hours of stuff.
I read that you had a desire to make like a 4-hour kind of mini-series documentary. Now, depending on the success of the film's theatrical run, could that still be a possibility for, say, a DVD release in the future?
Well, the biggest problem is the clearing the commercial archive and the music and longer versions. But, if there was an interest, there certainly seems to be a need, I think, of a different version for Australians who want to hear more music and want to hear more of the stories and don't necessarily need the story propelled forward at the pace that it usually does need to be in a cinema, So there's definitely a material there for a longer version. I don't know if it's 4 hours, but, we're seriously considering a director's cut, that could go for 2.5 hours.
The latter part of Michael's life was a lot of conflict with the press, especially in the UK. Richard, as someone who knew Michael, I'm really curious, how would Michael react to a world of social media? If he was around at the time of Facebook and Twitter, etc., is that something that he would reject, or would it be something that he would embrace because he would control the narrative of his own story?
I don't know if it's about control, but I think he would have appreciated social media because social media is a great antidote to the tabloid sort of the brutal English tabloid press of his era. It's almost Dickensian. When you go through the research and you look at the headlines that say you dirty dingo or dirty digger and you skirty rat and things like that, because he's wearing a sarong at one stage. It's just, it's really scraping the bottom of the barrel, and it's not anything a society should be proud of. But I think social media, with its freeing up of censorship and actually being able to find interesting and intelligent things in amongst the dross, would have been embraced by him and a liberation, because he could have got, without any middleman or being interpreted by a journalist, he could have got some of these thoughts and his even just interesting links or things that he connected with out there directly. I'm sure he would have had a big Twitter account and lots of followers, much like a lot of pop stars and rock stars do actually have. It's like so. I think he would have loved that sort of freedom and sort of almost sticking it to the conventional tabloid press. I mean, he was ranting about back in the day, the Murdoch press tapping his phone, and we were all just sort of going, Michael, you're losing it. You're getting very paranoid, and maybe you've got to calm down. And then 10, 15 years later, the News of the World scandal comes out about that era. Yeah. They were actually tapping everyone's phone.
Yeah.
So it was what we thought was egotistical ranting or losing it was basically quite prescient.
The film, for me, is about revelation. It's rewriting a legacy. And I think one of the big things that came from it, that, growing up in Australia, there's always been news about Michael Hutchence for as long as I can remember when I was growing up until his untimely death. And I think one of the big things that really came out of this documentary was the head injury that he sustained,
yes.
and the very real-life consequences that came from that.
Yes.
Why do you think he didn't want to reveal that story to anyone at that time?
Because he wanted to be taken seriously as an artist, especially within his close collaborators, like his band members and bandmates and things like that, and management. And if there was a knowledge, like a serious medical knowledge that he was impaired in any way, they would have shuffled him to one side to say, well, you don't have to write this song, we'll write it for you, or things like that, and he didn't want, his songwriting ability, which is, at its peak, quite extraordinary. As Chris Thomas says in the film, and I didn't realise this until I did the Chris Thomas interview, that he wrote the top lines on a lot of those songs, which is the melody that the singer sings. He not only wrote the lyrics, but he's writing these really high-range melodies where he's got, using the full range of his voice, and very catchy melodies of that, while Andrew Farris wrote the basic chord changes and things underneath. Not all the time, and that was his potency, and he didn't want to be not only sympathised with or sidelined, or he didn't want his potency put to bed in any way. And I think the songs he wrote after that assault show that he still had it. Like Searching, that we use at the end of the song, is a great song. It's got much more substance than some of the earlier In Excess songs, because he's singing about deeper and more emotionally tearing things. But when you look at the melody and the top line of that song, it's up there with his greatest melodies. And so I think he was kind of right, but I don't think he was very secure in that if people had known about his traumatic head injury, that they would have actually allowed him to keep writing all that stuff.
Once you have all of that 3 hours of footage in front of you, and you and your editors and your producers are going through all of it, was there anything that surprised you in regards to your friend, your collaborator that you knew for all those years? Were you taken aback by what you had in front of you and what you saw?
Yeah, I was surprised all the way, because I knew and connected with a very optimistic and charismatic and I would never say moody in any way at all, but what we uncovered, even going back before the assault in Copenhagen, was someone that did spend a lot of time hiding his depressive bouts, and then so you'd meet up for a video, or then some socialising after, or living together on a film set. And so you saw the great and charismatic and seductive side of Michael. And when I say seductive, not seductive as a friend and as someone to have an enjoyable evening with, not necessarily sexual seduction all the time, but and as soon as you start digging and you start hearing from the girlfriends and hearing from the tour mother, Martha Traup, who was his personal producer for, who was very connected as a maternal figure for, longer than most of his partners, you started to see and hear a very different side that, that he perhaps wouldn't show another Australian male, so the sort of the prismatic nature of the story was being filled out continuously. And then, there was the big reveal, which was when I finally got my hands on the full unedited coroner's report, and you go, wow, there's another big secret he was keeping within himself. I mean, we discovered letters that he wrote in the very early 80s to his partners of the time, and even they showed ups and downs that he'd never discussed with you as a friend. So, yeah, the whole process was putting together one of those giant jigsaw puzzles, and then, hopefully at the end it reveals the picture of Michael.
And it is quite an incredible picture indeed. Mystify, Michael Hutchence, releases July 4. For everyone listening out there, it will be in Australian cinemas July 4. I do recommend you watch this film. It is simply remarkable. And Richard Lowenstein, I thank you very much once again for your time today, and congratulations with the movie.
Thank you. Thanks for liking it.